My life took a delightful turn when I met James. Previously, my days revolved around navigating through one corporate crisis after another. However, entering James's life introduced me to a world filled with sweetness, quite literally, at his family-owned candy shop, Sweet Sanctuary. Here, love and confections blended seamlessly, and soon I found myself managing the finances of this charming little store. "Good morning, love," James would say, his smile brightening up the room as I walked into the deliciously scented shop. Despite any underlying tension, his warmth was a constant reminder of my new, joyful purpose. "Morning," I'd respond, sorting through the mail, mostly bills, which I'd become adept at handling. "Sales are up this month. That new chocolate line is really taking off," I'd share, trying to keep the mood upbeat. James would respond with a nonchalant shrug. "Yeah, well, that's all you're doing. Mom still sees me as the candy king," he'd joke, though I sensed a twinge of pressure beneath his casual demeanor. Just then, his mother, Patricia, would burst into the store, all smiles and invading personal space. "James, my boy, you've outdone yourself. The store looks fabulous," she'd exclaim, patting him on the back. Her eyes would then shift to me, her smile tightening ever so slightly. "Karen, still playing shopkeeper, I see." I'd let out a quiet sigh, keeping my tone polite. "Good morning, Patricia." "Yes, playing shopkeeper is keeping us in the black," I'd reply, avoiding confrontation. Patricia would dismiss my comment with a wave of her hand. Numbers. You should leave that to the accountants and help my son with the real business," her voice dripping with barely veiled disdain. Before I could respond, James would step in. "Mom, Karen's doing more than fine. We're doing great because she's got a business head." He'd put his arm around me, a silent but firm gesture of support. Patricia would sniff dismissively. "Well, as long as my boy is happy, I suppose that's what matters." With that, she'd flounce off, leaving a trail of her presence behind. James would squeeze my side apologetically. "Don't let her get to you," he'd murmur. I'd force a smile. "I'm not. Let's just focus on the shop, okay?" And we did, pouring our hearts into making Sweet Sanctuary not just a candy store, but a slice of paradise. That sense of paradise persisted until I began noticing troubling signs. Deliveries became more frequent, filled not with ingredients for confections, but with expensive gadgets carrying alarming price tags. "Another package, James?" I'd ask one evening, locking up the cash register and eyeing a sleek new gadget still in its packaging. "Oh, that's the new phone I ordered," James would say, his excitement palpable as he tore into the package. "Top of the line." I'd raise an eyebrow. "Don't we have other priorities? The mixer in the back has been making that strange noise." James would wave off my concerns, his attention glued to his new toy. "It's fine, Karen. We've got to treat ourselves too, you know." Part of me wanted to protest to remind him of the precarious financial tightrope we were walking, but I held back, hoping for a balance between treating ourselves and sustaining our dream. I kept quiet, though it wasn't just the phone causing my concern. Patricia, ever the showwoman, regularly flaunted her latest extravagant purchases, turning Sweet Sanctuary into her fashion runway. "Karen, look at this dress, isn't it just darling?" she'd say, twirling in an expensive floral dress that surely cost more than what we earned in a day. "It's nice," I'd reply, my tone measured. "But shouldn't we be saving to fix the sign outside?" Patricia would just pat James's cheek dismissively. "Nonsense, the store is doing wonderfully. James, tell her." James, only half paying attention, would nod in agreement. "Yeah, we're doing great, Karen. Don't worry so much." But that was exactly my issue. I did worry. Every time I checked our financials, the numbers told a different story, one of dwindling profits consumed by frivolous expenses. "Look, we should be careful," I suggested again later that week as we reviewed our financial situation. James gave me a look as if I'd proposed selling the store to join the circus. "A budget? Come on, Karen, it's not that bad. You're being stingy," he said. That word, stingy, it stung. I wasn't being stingy, I was being prudent. It's not about being stingy, James. It's about being smart. We need to think about the future of Sweet Sanctuary, I argued. But he seemed uninterested, already browsing another website for his next purchase. You worry too much, he dismissed, half distracted. It'll all work out. The situation escalated when Patricia decided we needed extra help. It was a Tuesday, our inventory day, and I was organizing our latest shipment of candy jars when she walked in, arm in arm with a young girl, barely 20. Karen, this is Lisa, Patricia introduced with a flourish. Lisa, dear, this is Karen, my son's assistant. I straightened up, wiping my hands on my apron. Nice to meet you, Lisa, but I'm the co-manager here, I corrected politely. Lisa's smile was polite but distant. I've heard a lot about you. I'm excited to be part of the team. Patricia's smug expression told me she hadn't consulted James about this hiring. What exactly will Lisa be assisting with? I asked, maintaining a friendly tone. Oh, she's going to help with the business side of things. You can only do so much after all, Patricia replied, her gaze flitting dismissively over my inventory sheets. I nodded, though confusion and concern mingled within me. All right, well, we have a system here, so I'll need to bring her up to speed. It quickly became apparent that Lisa's idea of helping was more about observing than actively participating. When I discovered the salary Patricia had approved for her, I was shocked. James, can we talk? I asked him later in the office. Sure, what's up? He asked, not looking up from his computer. It's about Lisa. Her salary, it's more than we can afford for her role, I explained. James finally looked up, his expression troubled. Mom said it was fine. She thinks Lisa's going to bring a lot to the table. I sighed, feeling as though I was speaking to a wall. The challenges at Sweet Sanctuary were mounting, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to keep our Sweet Sanctuary from turning sour. Despite our agreement to discuss new hires together, especially regarding their salaries, James dismissed the importance with a shrug, an all-too-common gesture of his lately. What's done is done. Mom has a good feeling about her, he remarked. Frustrated, I had to hold back my response. Relying on good feelings wasn't going to balance our books. I left his office, the only one apparently aware of the red flags, while James and his mother seemed to parade through the business blindfolded. I've always been meticulous, double-checking, and sometimes triple-checking, especially with numbers. One day, while searching for a misplaced invoice, I found an envelope tucked away in the back of a filing cabinet. Assuming it was just another overlooked bill, I opened it only to feel my heart drop. Inside was a loan document listing Sweet Sanctuary as collateral, with a sum wildly beyond what our humble shop could justify. James, I called, entering his cluttered office with the papers in hand. As he looked up, I caught a flicker of guilt in his eyes. His first in months. What is this? I asked. Oh, that? It's nothing, just a small loan I took out for store improvements, he replied nonchalantly. Store improvements? I repeated incredulously. This amount could renovate the store 9 times over. What did you really use it for? There was a tense pause, long enough for the truth to settle uncomfortably between us. Look, he began cautiously, I might have used some of it for the house, the one I've been fixing up for us. For us? I repeated, my tone sharpened by disbelief. Or for your gadgets and whatever else you've been wasting money on? He stood up then, his chair scraping back like a judge's gavel calling for order, yet all I felt was the rise of my frustration. It's not like that, Karen. You don't understand. This is all going to pay off in the end. I shook my head. No, James. Taking out a loan against the store without telling me, that's what I don't understand. How could you be so reckless? Before he could answer, Patricia entered, her expression souring as she noticed the documents in my hand. What's all this? She demanded. James started to explain, but I cut him off, pushing the loan papers toward her. Did you know about this? She barely glanced at the documents, dismissing them with a wave. Of course I did. James is just doing what's necessary for our future. And who are you to question him? You're just the help after all." Her words stung, but they also ignited a resolve within me. "Just the help?" I replied, my voice steady and firm. "I've been keeping the store afloat while you two have been treating it like your personal bank account." James's face turned pale, and Patricia looked as if she was ready to erupt. "You ungrateful little—" she began, but I interrupted, surprisingly calm. "What's ungrateful is not recognizing the hard work someone's putting into this business. What's foolish is risking everything for a house that we don't even need." They were speechless, caught in their misdeeds. I left the room then, the documents clutched in my hand like a pending judgment. Later that day, the kitchen table, usually reserved for casual meals, became the setting for a somber discussion, as if it were a council of war rather than a chat about a candy shop. James cleared his throat, avoiding eye contact. "We need to talk about the store's future," he said. I sat down, folding my hands on the table, ready to address the issues we had long ignored. As I sat at the table, confronting the harsh reality of our situation, Patricia's demeanor grew stern. "We need to be realistic, Karen. The store isn't making enough to cover the debts. We have to find money somewhere." It was the way she said "we" that sounded alarm bells. It seemed to imply the responsibility fell on me. "What do you suggest?" I asked, maintaining my composure. Her eyes flickered with a calculating coldness. "You have that inheritance from your parents. It could clear the debts and stabilize the store." I was taken aback, feeling like I was talking to a stranger, not the mother of the man I married. "You want me to use my parents' money, the money intended for my personal security?" I asked, incredulous. James chimed in, "It's not like you're doing anything else with it." "And what about our security?" Patricia interjected sharply, implying that my funds should be a familial resource. I looked between them, my heart sinking. "I am part of this family, but it feels like you only acknowledge that when you need something from me." James shifted uneasily. "It's not like that, Karen, but we're struggling here." "So you expect me to just hand over my future?" I questioned, disbelief coloring my tone. Patricia leaned in, pressing her point. "If you care about this family, yes." I thought about all the long hours and sleepless nights I had spent trying to keep the store afloat. "If I do this, if I use my inheritance, I want 1/3 of the store. I want to be an official co-owner." The room fell silent. Then Patricia laughed dismissively, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "You? A co-owner? Don't be ridiculous. You're not business material." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Then find another way to cover your debts because my inheritance is not your emergency fund." James's expression was unreadable, but Patricia's face flushed with anger. "You'd let this family business fail?" "I've tried to save it," I said, my voice quiet but resolute. "But I won't set myself on fire to keep you warm." That night, a nagging feeling pulled me back to sweet sanctuary. The shop was dark as expected, but a faint glow from the back office suggested otherwise. I pushed the door open, the usual comforting tinkle of the bell now sounding almost ominous. The sweet scent of candy, once reassuring, now seemed thick with deception. As I neared the back, the murmurs from the office grew louder. Through the partly open door, I saw James, his arms around Lisa, the new assistant, who giggled at something he whispered. I pushed the door fully open and they sprang apart, their faces morphing from shock to guilt in an instant. "Karen," James stammered, straightening his shirt, "it's not what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like I just caught my husband with his arms around another woman." Lisa fumbled with her hair, avoiding my gaze. "We were just going over inventory." "At midnight? With the inventory in your arms?" I replied dryly. James's eyes pleaded. "Karen, please. You're blowing this out of proportion." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Am I?" The cold calm that settled over me was clear. The trust and partnership I thought we had were shattered. From my perspective, everything was unmistakably clear. He stepped toward me, but I raised a hand to stop him. "Save it, James. I don't know which is worse, your cheating or the feeble lies." Lisa finally found her voice, though it was faint. "I'm sorry, Karen. I never wanted any of this to happen." I studied her, youthful, naive, tangled in the snare of a man unable to own up to his mistakes. "You should be sorry, and you, James, should start job hunting," I declared. James was quick to object. "You can't fire her over this." My determination was unyielding. "I can and I will. Tomorrow I'll be contacting a lawyer." His complexion turned ashen. "Karen, please, let's discuss this." "There's nothing left to discuss," I interrupted sharply. "You've made your choices. Now you have to live with them." Without waiting for his reply, I left the room, my head high, his pleas fading behind me. The following morning was bright, contrasting sharply with the gloom of our household. Having spent the night at my apartment, a property I maintained for rental, I sat at the kitchen table when my phone buzzed. It was a message from James. Tempted to ignore it, curiosity prevailed. It was a photo of a bank letter demanding immediate repayment. Below it, he typed, "We need to talk. This is serious." I replied, "On my way," and prepared to confront whatever awaited. When I reached the confectionery, James and Patricia were already there, pacing nervously. Patricia noticed me first, her expression darkening. "Decided to show up, did you?" she snapped as I entered. I nodded, meeting her glare. "You wanted to talk." James handed me the letter. "The bank's on us hard. We could lose everything." I reviewed the letter, unsurprised by the figures, yet uneasy. "So, what's your plan?" Patricia glared at me. "We wouldn't be in this mess if you just helped when we asked." Ignoring her, I turned to James. "What are you going to do?" He looked defeated, running a hand through his hair. "I thought maybe you could cover it with your inheritance." My laugh was bitter. "I told you I'm not footing this bill without a stake in the business." Patricia stepped forward. "You're being unreasonable, Karen. This is a family business." I met her challenge with forced calm. "And where was this family when your son was mismanaging our funds and hiring his buddies for kicks?" James opened his mouth to speak, but then faltered, looking down. "You don't get to play the family card only when it's convenient," I continued. "We'll need to figure something else out." James muttered, "You'll have to." Then, unexpectedly, Patricia smiled, but it wasn't pleasant. "Fine, but if you're not helping, then you're out. We'll manage without you. You're fired." I stared at her, letting the silence linger before matching her smile. "Okay." Their astonishment was almost amusing. "Just like that?" James asked, incredulous. "Just like that," I confirmed. "I need you to understand that I've meticulously gathered evidence. I took photographs of your dealings with Lisa and kept a detailed log of every dime squandered. If you think you can dismiss me and bury this mess, you're sorely mistaken." As Patricia's smile faltered, she said, "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, but I would. And as I leave, I'll take my hard-earned achievements with me. Let's see how you'll explain to the bank why the business is floundering without its real pillar." Months had rolled by since I last walked through the doors of Sweet Sanctuary. My life had since aligned with a new rhythm. Paper rustling, the quiet hum of productivity, and resolving challenges had replaced the fragrant whiff of sweets. Now seated in my crisp new office, a world away from the confectionary's chaotic storeroom, my phone rang. Angela's name lit up the caller ID. She was a former colleague from the shop and the only connection to that part of my past I maintained. "Hey, Angela, what's new?" I greeted, a tinge of apprehension in my voice, knowing that updates from Sweet Sanctuary always stirred old memories. "Haven't you heard?" Angela's voice mixed pity with discomfort. "The shop shut down last week, the bank foreclosed on it, and even their house." A sense of unanticipated relief washed over me. "How are James and his mother coping?" There was a brief pause. "Not well, I'm afraid. They've moved in with his aunt. They've been keeping a low profile." "Thanks for letting me know, Angela," I responded, the news settling in. She hesitated, then added, "Karen, everyone knew you were the lifeblood of that place. It just wasn't the same after you left." A small, sad smile touched my lips. "Thanks for saying so. How about you? Have you found something new?" "Yes, I'm at a bakery downtown now. It's no sweet sanctuary, but it's a beginning." "That's great to hear, Angela. You've always had a knack for baking. I'm sure you'll do well." We exchanged a few more words before ending the call. Looking out the window at the bustling street below, there was a knock at my door. "Your 4 o'clock appointment is here," my assistant announced. "Thanks, send them in," I replied, ready to shake off the last traces of nostalgia. A couple walked in, worry etched on their faces about their enterprise. As I stood to greet them, I felt energized by the new challenge. "We've heard excellent things about you, Karen," the wife said as they took their seats. "They say you're the top crisis manager around." I smiled, feeling at ease with the acknowledgement. "I'll strive to live up to that. Now, tell me about your business and let's explore how we can steer things back on track." As they detailed their issues, my mind buzzed with strategies. This was my domain now, where each problem had a remedy and every challenge was a doorway to opportunity. Sweet Sanctuary, with its bittersweet recollections, lay behind me, and ahead was a path I had crafted for myself, one of resilience, redemption, and new beginnings. As our conversation continued, their initial anxiety transformed into hopeful smiles. They departed with renewed vigor, and I turned back to my desk, my spirit lighter than it had been in ages. I realized then that the most rewarding victories often come after the toughest trials, and the future was mine to shape, one deliberate step at a time.